Think about every major piece of technology human beings have ever invented. The wheel, gunpowder, the printing press, the combustion engine, the internet. Now ask yourself, have we ever, even once, invented something incredibly powerful, realized it might be dangerous, and then collectively decided to just put it back in the box? Well, the answer is a resounding no. Our default as a species is relentless proliferation. We invent something, it gets cheaper, and then it spreads absolutely everywhere. But what happens when the next wave of technology isn't just a tool, but something entirely different? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're breaking down exactly what that means.
So here is the multi-trillion-dollar question. We've never contained a major technology in human history. So what happens when the next technology can actually think for itself? This isn't just some fun, hypothetical, sci-fi thought experiment. This is a massive wake-up call to the existential stakes we're facing literally right now. We're standing at a tipping point where the things we're building might soon slip way beyond our meaningful control. To really understand this, we're diving into a fascinating book called The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman. He's a co-founder of DeepMind and Inflection AI, which means he is a true tech insider. He's been in the closed-door boardrooms where the very future is being coded, and his message is pretty stark. He argues that while the coming wave of tech is going to bring unimaginable wealth and medical breakthroughs, it also brings a colossal threat. We desperately need to contain it, but our entire human history tells us we can't.
To figure out where we're going, we really have to look at the rhythm of our past. Suleyman calls us Homo technological, the technological animal. Think about the timeline here. 10,000 years ago, agriculture spreads across the globe. Jump to the 1400s, and the printing press completely breaks the monopoly on information. In the 1990s, the internet connects the whole planet. With every single wave, the tech gets cheaper, it gets easier to use, and eventually it becomes completely inevitable. We just don't uninvent things. The default state of human innovation is mass diffusion. But the wave crashing into us today is moving faster and cutting deeper than anything we've ever seen before. And this brings us right to the core of the issue, the containment problem. It's basically technology's built-in predisposition to spread everywhere and create totally unpredictable, uncontrollable impacts once it's out in the wild. Essentially, inventors always lose control of their creations. I mean, the people who built the early internet couldn't have possibly predicted modern social media algorithms or global cyber attacks, right? But because of the sheer scale and raw power of this new wave, our historical track record of losing control isn't just inconvenient anymore. It's actually terrifying. So why is this coming wave fundamentally different? Well, it rests on two massive pillars. First up, we have artificial intelligence, which operates in the realm of bits. It's the technology of intelligence. Second, we have synthetic biology, operating in genes. It's the technology of life. We are way past just building better tools to lift heavy rocks or send emails. We are actively engineering the very foundational building blocks of thought and biology. We're mastering intelligence and life themselves. And the craziest part? These aren't even isolated fields. Suleyman points out that AI and synthetic biology are already deeply entangled in this spiraling feedback loop. Just think about that for a second. We're talking about two monumental technologies merging into one chaotic, cross-catalyzing superwave. You've got AI being used to design much better genetic sequences and biological insights pushing computing forward. It's a total explosion of capability where progress in one field instantly accelerates the other. So you might be wondering, why is this superwave so incredibly hard to contain? Why can't governments just regulate it like airplanes or new prescription drugs? Well, the book identifies 4 unstoppable features that make this wave uniquely defiant of any traditional control. They are asymmetry, hyperevolution, omni-use, and autonomy. Let's break these down one by one because truly grasping these 4 features is absolutely crucial to understanding the danger we're in. First is asymmetry. This represents a colossal transfer of global power. Think about it. In the past, to really challenge a nation's state, you needed massive armies and vast resources. Today, a single 2-gigabyte algorithm on a cheap laptop can generate infinite deepfakes. A single pathogenic experiment in a tiny, underregulated lab could literally spark a global pandemic. A tiny input creates planetary disruption. By democratizing access to these incredible tools, we are also democratizing immense asymmetric power. Second, we have hyperevolution. Look, but we're all used to our tech getting better every year, but this is entirely different. This is technology rapidly improving itself.
Right now, AI is actively being used to design the insanely complex microchips needed to build even faster and smarter AI. It's a compounding loop of pure acceleration. It's iterating, it's branching into new areas, and it's advancing at a speed that sluggish, traditional government regulation simply has no hope of keeping up with. The third feature is omni-use. These are not single-purpose tools. Both AI and synthetic biology are inherently general technologies. A drone can be used to deliver life-saving medical supplies, or it can be rigged as a lethal weapon. A language model can write software to help a small business, or it can write sophisticated malware to hack into a city's power grid. Because these technologies can be applied to countless unpredictable things, you can't just ban a specific product. The underlying capability itself is just too versatile. And finally, the fourth and honestly most dangerous feature of all, autonomy. For all of human history, technology has been a dead tool that a human physically operates. A human was always in the loop. But we're now facing a terrifying shift. We are building systems capable of interacting, making decisions, and taking actions entirely without human oversight. You just give the machine a high-level goal, and it figures out how to achieve it on its own. The tool is, for all intents and purposes, coming to life. Which brings us to a really fascinating, if slightly unsettling concept. AI researcher Stuart Russell calls this the gorilla problem. See, humans control planet Earth, not because we're the biggest or the strongest animals around. Gorillas are way stronger than us. But humans are the ones who build the cages, simply because we're smarter. So the really terrifying question is this. What happens when humanity creates something significantly smarter than we are? If we end up becoming the gorillas in this dynamic, how do we possibly ensure we stay in control? This leaves us staring down what the source calls the great dilemma. It is the ultimate bind. On one extreme end of the spectrum, we face catastrophe, a chaotic, highly fragmented world of unleashed, destructive, and uncontrollable technologies. But what if governments try to step in and forcibly prevent that catastrophe? Well, then we risk steering right into dystopia, a rigid, draconian, centralized global surveillance state built for the sole purpose of keeping the tech in check. It's a rock and a hard place. Let's look a little closer at that path to catastrophe. Because raw power is decentralizing and getting incredibly cheap, access to catastrophic risk is becoming democratized. Bad actors, rogue states, chaotic individuals, they're all going to be incredibly empowered by this wave. We're talking about the very real potential for engineered pandemics, AI-driven automated cyber weapons, and unstoppable autonomous replication. The somewhat brittle foundations of our modern nation-states could just simply crack under the weight of millions of asymmetric threats. But trying to avoid that catastrophe presents its own absolute nightmare. Think about it. To physically prevent a single person from printing a virus or coding a rogue AI in their basement, a government would literally need to watch everything. Every computer, every lab, every server, every biological sequence. The path to dystopia requires omnipresent global surveillance and an extreme centralization of power. It's what philosopher Lewis Mumford called the mega machine control system. To save humanity from the tech, we might have to sacrifice all human privacy and liberty along the way. So is there any way out of this? Between the sheer cliffs of catastrophe on one side and dystopia on the other, the book outlines what it calls a narrow path. Containment isn't strictly impossible, but it demands a radically new architecture of control. There is no single silver bullet here. Instead, there are 10 interconnected steps we have to take. Let's distill those steps down into what we can think of as layers of defense, because passing standard government regulations alone is practically guaranteed to fail. First, we need bulletproof technical off switches, hard-coded directly into the software and the DNA. Second, the makers, the technologists building this stuff, must act as their own harshest critics. They have to be deeply focused on safety, not just rushing to deploy. Third, we have to invent entirely new commercial models that balance massive profit incentives with strict human purpose. And fourth, we absolutely need binding, highly enforceable international treaties to prevent a terrifying global race to the bottom. It has to be a deeply layered technical, commercial, and global effort. To really understand just how fragile our situation is, listen to how Suleyman describes it. Rather than a corridor, I imagine containment as a narrow and treacherous path, wreathed in fog, a plunging precipice on either side. One precipice is an open free-for-all that ends in absolute catastrophe. The other is a lockdown surveillance grid that ends in total dystopia. Surviving the 21st century requires us to walk exactly down the middle, with a monumental, completely unprecedented level of focus. Which brings us to our final takeaway for today. Are we prepared to walk the narrow path and contain the seemingly uncontainable? The wave is already swelling, the financial incentives are fully locked in, but the final outcome? That is not yet written. Technology should amplify the absolute best of us, but ensuring it actually does will be the defining challenge of our lifetimes. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. As you look at the world around you this week, ask yourself, how will we ensure humanity manages to walk that narrow path?